You're standing at Yellowstone. You're taking the same photo every tourist takes. Steam drifts up. The ground vibrates like a heavy truck somewhere in the distance, and then it hits you. You're not just visiting a national park. You're standing on top of one of the largest volcanic systems on Earth. You've probably heard the jokes. It's overdue, any day now. But you deserve the truth, not the hype. This isn't here to scare you or sell you some bunker daydream. We're going to run a clean, realistic, what-if scenario, so you can understand what it could mean for you, your family, and your country if something unthinkable happened in our lifetime. Here's what you're looking at. Yellowstone isn't a single cone-shaped volcano. You're on a massive caldera, an ancient collapse basin left behind by past giant eruptions. Most days, you'd never know it. You see geysers, hot springs, boardwalks, and hiking trails. But under your feet is heat, pressure, and a complex plumbing system of hot rock and partially molten material. Something scientists watch around the clock. And yes, if anything truly massive were building, you would almost certainly get warning signs first. You wouldn't wake up to a sudden movie-style blast with no lead-up. The ground would talk before it broke. You'd see swarms of small earthquakes. You'd hear about ground movement measured in inches. You'd notice changes in gas and heat output, and strange shifts in the hydrothermal areas. You wouldn't need a geology degree to feel that something was off. You'd feel the shaking, you'd see closures, and you'd hear officials change their tone. This is where it stops being a headline and becomes personal. Because the moment experts start saying, "We're concerned," the country changes. You don't wait for an eruption to feel fear. You feel sit at the warning. You refresh your phone again and again. You call relatives. You pull up a map and realize the West isn't just scenery. It's where millions of people live, where major highways and rail lines run, where food and fuel move every day. And one question starts repeating in your head, louder than the rest. Where do we even go? So let's set the rules now, with you in mind. We're assuming a modern United States. We're assuming the monitoring works, the warnings go public, and leaders have to make decisions fast under constant attention. And we're assuming your life doesn't politely pause. Work, school, bills, grocery runs, everything still pushes forward, even while the ground starts acting strange. And in the next part, you'll hit the first real trigger. The moment the message shifts from stay aware to start moving, and you realize you're not just watching history unfold, you're trying to get ahead of it. The first change doesn't come with fire or ash. It comes as a sentence on your phone that makes your stomach drop. The alerts stop sounding routine. The wording turns blunt. Officials say ground activity is rising fast, and they're preparing for a major event. You hear the same message on TV, on the radio, and from friends who never follow the news. It feels like the whole country leans forward at once. At first, you try to keep your life normal. You go to work. You drop your kids at school. You tell yourself this could still calm down. But then the small signs show up. Quiet, practical, impossible to argue with. Schools near the park close out of caution. Flights get rerouted. Certain highways become restricted. And then the big announcement lands. Large parts of the West are being told to evacuate. Not tomorrow, not next week, now. This is the moment the math stops working. You look at a map and realize how many people are inside that zone, and how few roads actually lead out. You might have a full tank and a plan, but so does everyone else. Millions of people reach for the same exits at the same time, and the system was never designed for that kind of movement. Gas stations run dry within hours. Shelves get stripped fast. Not by villains, but by families trying to protect their kids. You stand in line and feel the shift in the air, the way people get quieter when they stop joking. Traffic becomes the new weather. It's everywhere, and it decides everything. You crawl forward mile by mile. You pass overheated cars on the shoulder. You see people turn around because they can't find fuel. Your GPS keeps offering new routes, but every option is packed. You stop thinking in big plans and start thinking in basics. Water, phone chargers, batteries, food that won't spoil. and where you'll sleep tonight if the roads don't clear. Meanwhile, the economy reacts before the ground does. Markets swing hard. Shipping companies pause routes. Some insurers freeze new coverage in certain regions. And even places far from Yellowstone feel the tremor because the country runs on the same web of trucks, warehouses, rail lines, and power. Your local store might be 1,000 miles away from the park, but it still depends on a schedule. Now, that schedule starts to slip, and then to break. As the evacuation spreads, the mood changes in towns that are still considered safe. At first, communities welcome people. Then, shelters fill up. Hotels sell out. Parking lots turn tense. Checkout lines get sharp. A few people try to profit off the fear with price spikes, and officials warn about scams. Police and emergency crews stretch thinner every hour, and you realize something uncomfortable. Rules only feel solid when people believe the system can keep up. You keep waiting for one clear answer. Are we safe if we leave? But no one can promise that. The only honest message is uncertainty. You hear it in every press conference. You catch it in the pauses, the careful wording, the strained voices on the radio. And as you sit in traffic, watching the sun drop behind a long red chain of brake lights, you understand something that changes you. The eruption hasn't happened yet, but your life is already in emergency mode. You feel it before you see it. The shaking that used to come in short bursts turns into a long, heavy roll, like the ground is trying to breathe. Your phone drops signal, then catches it again in flashes, and every alert sounds more urgent than the last. You might be hundreds of miles away, but you can tell something has crossed a line. Then the sky changes. At first it looks like a distant storm, but the shape is wrong. It rises straight up, tall, fast, and still climbing. Within minutes, news stations shift from cautious talk to stunned silence, and you hear the same words repeated by different voices. It has begun. If you're close enough, you don't need a screen. You see a towering column rising and spreading outward, and daylight starts to thin under a gray veil. If you're farther away, you watch the map fill with closures like a spill that keeps spreading. Major highways lock down. Airports shut down runways. Controllers reroute what they can, then stop because you can't fly safely through a sky filled with fine particles. What hits you next isn't heat, it's ash. It doesn't fall like soft snow. It drifts, swirls, and works its way into every crack. You taste grit in the air. Your eyes sting. You start doing practical things on instinct. Closing vents, sealing windows, checking on neighbors. Because you quickly learn this isn't just dirty air. It clogs filters, it strains engines. It turns a normal drive into a gamble. If you're on the road, you pull over because visibility drops and tires lose grip on a thin layer of dust. In some places, the weight becomes its own danger. Warnings go out about roofs, especially flat ones. Officials tell people to stay inside and protect their lungs, and you realize how many communities are built for rainstorms, not for heavy ash. You sweep it off porches and cars, but it keeps coming, carried by winds you can't bargain with. The country's center of gravity shifts in real time. The west coast becomes cut off in pieces. Ports slow down. Rail lines pause in key corridors. Trucks miss their schedules, and when trucks stop, everything you take for granted starts to feel fragile. You walk into a store and see gaps spreading from one aisle to the next. Not because food disappeared overnight, but because the system that moves it is starting to choke. Power gets unstable in parts of the country. Not everywhere, not all at once, but enough that you begin treating electricity like a limited resource. You charge what you can. You conserve fuel. You keep one ear on updates at all times. You learn new habits fast because the old habits depend on clear air and reliable transportation. And as the ash cloud stretches across the nation, you understand the hardest truth of the moment. This isn't a single event you get through in a day. It's a chain reaction. It redraws your map, breaks your routines, and forces decisions hour by hour. In the next part, you'll see what happens when the sky stays dim, the growing season falters, and the rest of the world starts to feel what you're living through. Weeks pass, and you realize the hardest part isn't the day the sky turned gray. The hardest part is waking up and seeing it still hasn't fully cleared. You step outside, and the light feels muted, like the sun is stuck behind a thin curtain. Some days are brighter, some days aren't. And even when the air improves, the patterns feel wrong. Nights drop colder than they should. Spring shows up late. Summer feels shorter. You start checking forecasts the way you used to watch breaking news, because weather now decides what you can grow, what you can ship, and what you can afford. Food becomes the center of life in a way most Americans have never had to think about. Not because everything vanishes overnight, but because the normal flow breaks and stays broken. Crops that depend on steady sunlight struggle. Pastures recover slowly. Feed costs climb. Processing plants and transport routes keep running, but at reduced speed and with constant interruptions. You see ration limits in stores, not to scare you, but to keep shelves from being wiped out in an hour. You learn to plan meals around what's available, not what you want. And if you have kids, you feel the pressure every time you open the pantry and do the math in your head. Money, stress spreads next. Prices rise on basics. Some jobs pause because supplies can't arrive, or customers can't spend. Small businesses that depend on steady deliveries and steady foot traffic get hit hard. At the same time, you watch communities show up for each other in practical ways. Sharing generators, organizing rides, checking on older neighbors, setting up local distribution points. But you also see tension creep in because fear makes people suspicious. Rumors move faster than facts. Scams pop up online. Officials repeat the same message again and again. Don't trust random claims. Don't send money to strangers. Don't follow secret instructions. As the months drag on, the ripple spreads beyond the United States. You notice it in headlines about rising global food prices, shipping slowdowns, and political strain in countries that were already living close to the edge. Even if your town stays quiet, you can feel the world tightening. And inside the US, a familiar pattern starts to take shape. When life becomes uncertain, people go looking for someone to blame. Some point at agencies, some point at scientists, some point at neighbors who arrived from evacuation zones, some point at outsiders online. You feel the pull of it, because blame can feel cleaner than uncertainty. But it doesn't put food on a truck, and it doesn't clear the sky. You also see new groups form around belief and identity. Some are helpful. Volunteer networks, church kitchens, mutual aid, community gardens and farms. Others are loud and divisive, promising easy answers and simple enemies. Over time, you learn to judge by outcomes. Who is actually helping you get through the week, and who is just selling anger? And then you run into the quiet question the country can't avoid. Not will we recover, but who will we become while we try? Roads can be rebuilt. Power lines can be restrung. Factories can restart. Fields can be replanted. But you can't erase what it felt like when the map stopped working, when shelves thinned out, and when your normal life turned into a daily survival plan. In the end, you understand this isn't just a disaster story. It's a test of habits, trust, and community. And the real ending depends on what happens next, how you treat the people around you, what you choose to believe, and whether you pick panic or discipline.